The next item on the agenda, case 2021 R043, Sunny Susan Bolton, represented by Becky Cato, are requesting to rezone 9.3 acres from R1, single family residential, and HCD, highway commercial development, to R2, medium density residential, and also amend the future land use from single family residential and commercial to medium density residential. The subject site is located on the 1600 block of Beechwood Drive in Gulf Breeze. The subject site is in an R1 single family residential and partial HCD highway commercial development zoning district. The proposed zoning would be all R2, medium density residential. This is an area of the subject site and surrounding properties. This is a close-up area of the subject site. The existing land use is single family and residential and industrial, with a mixture of vacant and single-family residential to the north, east, and west, and then industrial, vacant, and some office to the south. The future land use is single-family residential and that portion of commercial. The proposed future land use is medium-density residential. This is looking south down Beechwood Drive. The site is to the left. This is looking west into the intersection at Kelly Lane in Beechwood. The site is behind us. This is looking north up Beechwood. The site is to our right. And this is a view into the site from Beechwood. This is the site plan submitted by the applicant. And that's all I have.
Good evening. I'm Becky Cato from PACE, and I am here tonight to represent the property owner in this request to rezone 9.3 acres in the Midway area. The reason that we're asking to rezone this property is because we want to develop townhome units on the property instead of the single family or commercial that can be done there now. We're asking for R2 because that's the lowest density residential category that will allow a townhome development. I want to be very clear that we're not asking for R2 because we want 10 units an acre. We do not. Although that's the maximum allowed, that's not what we plan to do on that property. In fact, the site plan that's in your package, the preliminary site plan, the density of that is only 3 units an acre for this property, which is less than the current zoning of R1 allows. R1 allows 4 units an acre. Typically, of course, when you plat a residential subdivision, you get less than actually 4. But with the recent change to allow 50-foot lots, you get better numbers there with the R1. So what we're proposing really is not higher density than can be allowed there. It's just a different type of unit. With these townhomes, townhome differs from apartments, if you will, based on ownership. The owner owns the unit and the dirt underneath it, and typically the dirt in front and in back. Something I want to mention about townhome development in Santa Rosa County, this is unique, and I think it's important for the zoning board to understand this because we don't do a whole lot of townhomes in Santa Rosa County. With a single-family residential subdivision, the area is platted, the individual lots are sold then to the builder, and the builder builds it. And in doing that, they have to grade the lots and all that kind of stuff. With a townhome, it's a little different. It's initially approved as a site plan, as a site plan, not as a plat. So it goes through the commercial review process. And in doing that, it meets a higher standard when it comes to things like tree protection. It's easier to manage stormwater when you do it that way because it's all done together. Typically, the slabs are poured for the townhome units, and then after that, when they're really clear where the units are actually going to be on the property, then they do the surveying and develop a plat from that, and they can sell the dirt under each one of those units. Do you see what I mean? So the initial development of the property is all done at one time, meaning that you really can control that stormwater better. And so you have fewer stormwater problems than you might see in a single-family residential subdivision where everybody's having to grade those lots individually, and individual property owners have a little more leeway of that over time, it's just harder to manage that. I think particularly in the south end of the county, we've seen a big demand for tree protection. Doing this as a townhome development requires a higher level of tree protection than if it was single-family lots. Because they're townhomes and not R1 development, it will require a buffer between this development and what's around it, and I think that's going to be very important for development in that area. You see on the in the staff analysis, I want to point out that when it comes to traffic, what we're requesting, the development potential for that does not increase the potential traffic. Granted, you're going to build anywhere, you're going to have some cars. But this particular zoning change doesn't increase the traffic potential. And staff has also noted that there are no wetlands on the site. So it's suitable for development. The only thing that they noted is that it doesn't seem to fit in the surrounding area, and I think that might just be because we don't see much townhome development in Santa Rosa County yet. I just came back from 2 weeks in the suburbs of Richmond, Virginia, where there's more of a mix of housing types, and it was really obvious to me how those mesh well, and the townhomes often provide a good transition from single-family homes to, as in this case, then townhomes, and then the more intense commercial development then that's south of that. So I would say that just by nature, particularly with the density being exactly the same as what you would get with the single family, I would contend that this is definitely a compatible development. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board has or any questions that the public might have.
Does the board have any questions? Anybody like to speak in opposition?
Elton Killam, 6256 East Bay Boulevard. I ask, why other than more profit does this zoning change need to be made? Does Midway need the added density? 47 years ago, when I first moved to Midway, there was a sign at the beginning of the Lanyappi Beach Road that had all the names of everybody that lived on the road, which is now called East Bay Boulevard. There were a few cars then, but now I'm afraid to drive on it due to the concrete trucks, the dump trucks, the contractors, the fast trucks, and just crazy drivers. It all seem to be in a mad rush to build out Midway before mid-impact fees or the tree ordinances go into effect. I've lived through many storms and hurricanes: Frederick, Aaron, Opal, Dennis, Ivan, Sally, and I've watched the white sandy beach in front of my house disappear, only to be replaced by expensive rocks and seawalls. The taxes and insurance have gone up. East Bay Boulevard has turned into one big Airbnb. Now, you're the front line to deny these additional structures that I'm hearing about all night, and you have no control over it. The state has control over it, but you could stop it at this point. New residents put in wells. They think the water's free. When they have them on sprinkler systems that run in the driving rain, and there's now saltwater intrusion in Gulf Breeze and wells. And I've read that the average individual can use as much as 500,000 gallons of water per year. This figure does not account for car washes, commercial developments, and farms. Now, we're living in a county that's currently in a state of chaos. Midway has grown 21.4%, according to the News Journal. Mr. Parker, our commissioner, has even said that he wonders if the growth will keep up with the infrastructure, because it's not keeping up right now. The chaos has been caused by the departure of 23 county employees, the county attorney, the administrator, his assistant, a grant person, other personnel, and even this entire board was replaced. So this is the kind of environment that these out-of-state profiteers like to take advantage of, where you have no impact fees, no regulations, and your LDC is subject to be changed by the zoning board and the county commission at any time. When they develop this property, the creatures on the ground, in the air, in the water are being killed. They're run out of their natural habitat. Bears and snakes are driven out of the woods.
Sir, excuse me, do you have anything relevant to this case?
Well, this is the.
It don't seem like it's relevant to the case we're
Okay,
discussing.
the
So let's get on
people
point,
of
if you
Hickory
don't mind.
Shores deserve to live in an R1 environment. That's the deal they made. They have a homeowners association. This development will change the density and will change the rules of a homeowners association. And regardless of what she says, there's going to be more water usage, more traffic, and more strain on the infrastructure down there. And we just don't need it. And you don't need to keep approving projects that add to the problem. So I'd go on about the oyster beds that are out there in the water that are going to be impacted when this thing doesn't work out, and the fact that this is a very unique geographical location. If you're familiar with it, it's where there's a dip in the road, there's a basin at Beaver Creek, everything runs down there and runs into East Bay. I think that's relevant, Mr. Norris. Thank you.
Subdivision, every development is relevant. So why you pick on this one?
I'm picking on this one because of the geographic location.
It's no different than any other job. It's no different than where you live.
Well,
You know, and I'm not going to sit here and argue with you, but you go off on oyster beds and all this other stuff, and we're here to discuss this case, and we don't have a lot of time for getting into research on the whole geographical area. We're concerned about this development. So
well,
let's
it's
stay
a
on
cancer
point. I
growing
noticed you
on the
come up here
whole
several
area.
times during this meeting, during these meetings and processes that we go through, and I've noticed you have a lot of environmental studies and things you've read about and all that, but it doesn't seem that you know exactly, in my opinion, just my opinion only, that you don't understand exactly what you're talking about. So we're discussing this particular development.
well,
And I'd like for you to stay on point. If you have
Okay,
anything to
I
say
have
pertaining to your opposed
47
of it, we
years.
got it, we understand it. So if you would, let somebody else speak, please. I would appreciate it. Thank
Okay.
you.
And just let you know, please keep your rebuttals to 4 minutes. That's what we're keeping track of. Thank you.
Y'all excuse my hat. I just had eye surgery. I'm trying to keep those lights out of my eyes. My name is Jim Patrick. I live at 4645 Hickory Shores Boulevard. I live adjacent to the property that Sonny Bolton owns. As a matter of fact, could I ask you to pull up the one of the one that shows the vacant signs? I want to. It shows vacant. Okay, No, go back, one more. There we go. Okay, the one that says vacant and has the line drawn through it, the triangle below that, my wife and I own that. Yep, the one below it, that one. That big one, big triangle. That one, we own that one too. All right, the one above it, that's white, the white one with the, we own that one. Okay, go to your left. Go to your left. One more. We own that one. Okay, go down. Now go to your left. We own that one. Okay, we own 5 parcels there, so we own quite a bit of land right around Miss Bolton's property. Now, what I'd like to point out is the fact that the topography of that land is just, it falls off sharply at about a 60-degree angle from the high point of Miss Bolton's property, which is approximately 26 to 28 feet above sea level. And right through the center of that vacant parcel there is called, yes, right through there. We have that turned into, we bought that and turned that into a conservation zone. There's a beautiful creek called Beaver Pond Creek that goes through that, and the elevation and the runoff, if it's not caught by the retention pond, is going to sharply run into that Beaver Pond Creek. And I believe that there are approximately 6 individuals at this meeting whose property is in jeopardy with increased surface water or urban runoff. Now, another problem we've got is on the opposite side of Highway 98. When they widen 98, they're going to put another retention pond in over there for the widening. It's going to be, and it's going to drain into that Beaver Pond Creek and that Beaver Pond. Now, the problem we've got with that is all of that is going to go into East Bay, and East Bay is Class 2 waters, and just down from that is an aquaculture operation. There is a successful oyster farmer there, and I feel bad about that. I guess maybe we're not supposed to talk about that for some reason. But anyway, let me see if I've covered. I sent y'all a letter, and I think all of you have received my letter. Have y'all had a chance to read my letter that I sent to you? Have you people? It's in your package. Have you had a chance to read it? Please. One person has.
I've read it.
Okay, good. I'm glad y'all read it. Thank you. Okay, I don't have much more really, except I do have something I want to add, and it's the sewer is quite a distance from these townhouses. It's going to be between 1/4 and 1/2 mile, and it's going to be a low pressure pumping station that they use all over. It's very common. But just a few days ago, lightning struck the one in Holly, struck the transformer in Holly and shut that one down. And they just barely saved a sewage spill. And it would have been a bad sewage spill, and it would have gone right into that creek and right into East Bay. And this is going to be the same thing here. It's low pressure sewage that's going to have to be pumped into the...
Yes, sir. You're over your 4 minutes, too. I'll let you go another 30 seconds.
I didn't know we were keeping up with our time.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, then I guess I'm done. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
I want to thank the board for the opportunity of assembly and the opportunity to speak. My name is Patrick Borthwick. I live at 1736 Beaver Pond Road in property adjacent to the proposal to the east. I worked for 38 years as a biologist for Fish and Wildlife, EPA, and I did some contract work for NASA after I retired in 2005. Both my wife, Julie Rose Borthwick, and I are retired, and we plan to age in place in our forever home on Beaver Pond Road, which is on Beaver Pond Creek. Our home is the greatest financial investment we've made in our lifetime. Our paradise is among many naval live oaks, magnolia, and hickory, a unique wetland with high uplands gives this property special status. The old scrub habitat that we live on is in lake succession. The beaver pond is in succession, as was the upper beaver pond closer to 98, which is now a meadow because of siltation due to nutrients. And it's happened since I've occupied this land. We feed the songbirds. We often see and hear eagles, osprey, hawks, owls. We see and hear wildlife such as alligator, raccoon, possum, skunk, fox, squirrel, otter, beaver, wildcat, deer, and bear. Wildlife on this land has suffered a loss of habitat, loss of foraging ground, and an increase in wildlife encounters is being noted all over Santa Rosa County, especially on the south end. Encounters with humans, encounters with pets. Some of this wildlife can carry parasites and diseases like rabies and distemper. Natural wildlife is now competing for food resources with feral cat population, varmints like coyotes and armadillos that are non-indigenous. Wild animals are no longer sustained by their natural foods. They're becoming more and more dependent on humans, and they're making raids on pet food, bird feeders, compost piles. Raccoons are damaging ornamental plants just to get the earthworms in the soil. Bears are literally tearing down fences. The sharks and dolphins, they're not on this land, but they're taking your fish that you catch out when you're snapper fishing. The dolphins have turned into bums. They're free-loading off fishermen now. The shark encounters on the frontal beaches has increased because of the reduced fish population. That's why we're seeing people get hit by sharks. They're just trying to get something to eat. They're not trying to eat people. They're without food. The bears are literally tearing down fences, damaging gardens, destroying beehives, and the seagrasses and oyster reefs are gone just in the time I've been there in East Bay. And that's a direct result of rampant development in Santa Rosa County, especially along the Fairpoint Peninsula. We've got several Native American sites in the Beaver Pond, Hickory Shores area that have been documented by archaeologists and natural archaeologists with the university, and there's published information on these campsites or Native American locations immediate to the property that we're talking about. So, in summary, I don't want to sacrifice our single-family home values due to impacts that come from changing R1 to R2 in order to grow developers' pocketbook. We don't want the increased density of residences and the loss of space between the townhouses.
Yes, sir, you've reached
Due
your time.
to,
You've reached your time limit.
okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Oops. Good evening. My name is Bill Davey. I live at 5168 Point Shores Lane in Gulf Breeze. Okay, and I'm not going to talk about the environmental impact of this property. It's going to be developed, we all know that. But how do we want it to be developed? That's the question we're asking right here. Do we want it to continue being single-family residential, which you folks and the commissioners decided in your long-term planning, that's what it should be. And that's the nature of the area. Or are we going to make it something else? And when you make it something else without really seeing a plan that's written in stone, you really don't have any idea what you're doing. Because once that land gets changed to different zoning, without a plan dedicated to it, it can become anything. And when the attorney here talked about, well, you know what, we're only 3 lots per acre and we could go 4. Well, that may or may not be true. In order to access that property, you have to put in roads and everything else, and they probably couldn't have quarter-acre lots, that many quarter-acre lots, okay? So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get in there, and they're going to pull the wool over your eyes. They're going to put up all this stuff. I would like to see a plan that maintains the nature of the area, single-family residences, okay? Stick to your quarter acre things, because I guarantee these pieces of property are not on quarter acres. They're taking that whole piece of land and they're dividing it up into little itty-bitty parcels, and they say they have that green zone around them, but they're including that in that division. These are tiny lots, folks, and that's not the nature of the area. Please keep it single-family residential. That's what it was always supposed to be. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you guys for hanging out here and listening to all of us tonight.
Can you please state your name?
Yes,
and
I'm
address?
Dr. Michael Paget. I am at 4340 Hickory Shores Boulevard. I am the Hickory Shores Homeowners Association president. I submitted a letter to you guys. I'll try to keep my discussion here brief this evening. I think this is pretty much an open and shut case. I pretty much disagree with everything that Ms. Kiddo says. She's tried to lay out a convincing case and made some nice statements about what this thing's going to be. And at the end of the day, the problem is this is an R1 neighborhood, and we don't oppose her building R1 homes. That's fine. That's what it already is. And there's really no reason to go change it. The whole entire place is R1. One of the things I would like to do, first and foremost, of course, we submitted some petition signatures, and I hope that got included into the actual, meeting itself regarding, how many people are opposed to this. And I might add, those signatures are garnered over a holiday weekend when about 1 out of 2 people weren't even home. And we could easily double those signatures without any kind of problem. But I would just like to start out first and foremost by just asking everyone in the crowd that currently opposes this to please just stand up for a minute. So I don't think we have enough time for every last one of us to talk. I don't think that's going to work. First and foremost, everybody be seated, please. I really feel like, the most important thing to me, because, everybody else has already talked about a lot of ecological stuff and everything else. This is really straightforward. This is, they want to change it from R1 to R2. It doesn't need to be R2. They can go build R1 homes. We don't oppose that. That's fine. The most important piece of information I think I can present is actually a previous case, and I did include that. I hope that everybody looked at that in the submissions that were put in there. There's been a previous attempt at another property that's in this area, in this same subdivision, that they tried to make it from R1 to R2. And this very board, as well as the Board of County Commissioners, both voted against it. And the statement was that that subdivision, which was almost identical to what they're wanting to do here, R1 to R2, was not in the best interest and in the character of the neighborhood. So this has already been tried. It's already been voted down. It's already been said that this is not in the best interest of the neighborhood. And I really feel like this needs to be something that you need to stick with, and it doesn't need to be some sort of a new arbitrary decision that's going to change or overrule this. There's already a precedent that's been set. I think it's really straightforward. But certainly you have a wealth of, almost assuredly letters, and we've got our petition signatures and everything else that's against this, subdivision. And that's really what I've got to say. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, can I respond to a couple of the things that were mentioned?
Absolutely, just keep it to 4
Okay,
minutes, please.
Importantly, a number of things that we heard are things that are going to occur regardless of what's developed there. Some of the trees need to come out, some of the wildlife will be displaced. That will happen. I commend this gentleman very much for choosing to put land that he owns into conservation area. I wish we all could do that. The best I've been able to do is dedicate the back quarter of my property, and I don't have nearly what he has. He's correct that on his property it does slope steeply down to Beaver Pond Creek. We don't own that property, though, where my client's property doesn't slope as steeply. The slope across that wider parcel is much less than the area surrounding it when you zoom out on the topography map and look at the overall area. And like I said, in developing, the way we have to develop townhomes in Santa Rosa County, where you have to do the site plan first and it's all put in one fell swoop, it's much easier to manage that stormwater so you don't get the problems that you get with individual single-family lots. Again, let me just mention again, you get more tree protection with townhomes, which I know the South End wants. The density that we want to do on this property really is the same as what's around it. So in that regard, it does not increase the impacts of people. In fact, townhomes generate fewer vehicles per unit than a single-family residential home would. I know your job would be much easier if you didn't have to look at the criteria to make a decision. If you could just take a vote at each meeting, it would make it easier. But of course, you understand that's not legal. You really are bound to look at the criteria for these. So that said, your job is much harder than any of us would want to do. So, and if you have any questions for me before you.
I do, Ms. Falconberry, or Ms. Cato. A development of this nature, every drop of water has to be retained on this property.
They cannot increase what flows off of the property. So any increase that's caused by the development, of course, when you develop it, you put an impervious surface. And so that does increase water that doesn't soak into the ground. That increase cannot flow off of the property. They have to direct that into the stormwater pond. So there can't be an increase in water that goes. And I'm glad you asked about that, because I think the comments made about the importance of the water quality going into the sound or into the Bay Area is very important. And the holding pond is required to be engineered both for quality and quantity of water. It's not just to hold the volume of water so that it doesn't cause flooding. Importantly, it's required to completely capture that first flush of water so that the impurities are filtered out of it before it gets into the natural water system.
Yeah, I did understand that one of the gentlemen spoke about the settlements and things that would leach off the property. And I wanted to make sure that the public did understand that retention ponds do their job, and especially nowadays where we've had in the past projects that got approved and retention wasn't done correctly. But the county has got pretty astute to watching what's happening nowadays with retention and retaining water, and we've solved a lot of our problems. I kind of apologize to the gentleman that I got a little upset with, but I understand these things and I understand what's going on here, and I would not be for this if I knew the drainage was going into that beaver pond and flowing out into our bays. Definitely I'd be 100% proposed. Now the question is, residential or putting a townhouse development in the middle of, these people's homes that have single-family dwellings. I'm a little concerned about that, and I believe the people have a I believe they have a concern with this, and that's the dilemma I have at present, is does these single-family homes around this development, actually need to happen? Is this a good location for such a development? It seems to me that, single-family homes in this area is what should be required. That's just my personal opinion.
My name's Rick Vogler. I live at 4607 Hickory Shores Boulevard. We are going to be right back off the corner of that property where the retention pond is. And first of all, y'all are lucky because about 75% of what I wanted to say has been said very well by these people. The single family homes, that's what that neighborhood is. Most of us are almost half-acre lots. Quarter-acre lots. We don't want a bunch of townhomes put right on top of it. But my main concern, the retention pond. That's over 1 acre, according to that plot. 1 acre. Right behind me, my neighbor's house, where we already have water flowing downhill right on us. I mean, it comes, naturally it comes down. Now you're going to have a retention pond sitting right there. Pretty sure they're going to build it up to hold the water. Am I correct? Is that how it works? They should be. But it's sloping down toward us. It's coming down right behind our house, right here. That retention pond is going to be up on one of the higher parts of that whole street. It sits up at the high level. The condo houses, whatever, go there. A retention pond put right there is going to have, the backside of it's going to have to be built up. Let me tell you, the water's already flowing practically into the houses. You start building a retention pond, that's the first thing. I'm not an engineer, so I can't argue to that. All I know is, from looking at it from my perspective, I don't want a 1 acre pond put right in my backyard. Second, I'd like to know how 28 units on 9 acres, that's 28 families, 28 owners, how are they going to pay to keep that retention pond going 5 years from now when it goes down? Who's going to finance that? When that thing craps out, then all the sludge and everything else is going to go downhill behind it, right through the neighborhood that's been there for years. So, answer that question. Can the lawyer tell us that you're going to be here 10 years from now, making sure that retention pond doesn't screw everybody else up behind it? You got that in the plan? Thank you. I appreciate it.
Let me clarify that I'm not a lawyer. I'm a planner, and I know that's, anyway, I'm not an attorney. I'm also not an engineer, but we do have an engineer working on this project who will be responsible for designing the holding pond. I don't know that the details of how that northern side of it will work. I don't know if they'll have to build up or not. I don't know if they've gotten that far. Importantly, though, this gentleman was correct. Most of the property the water does flow that direction already, which means that even if they put in a single-family platted subdivision, that's where the holding pond is going to be. And a single-family subdivision is likely to have more impervious surface after putting in the roads, and typically larger footprint for the homes and that kind of thing. So that's going to be there regardless. And I understand the concern, but importantly, as I mentioned before, townhomes are going to be required to have natural buffers then around those property lines, whereas a single-family home would not have to do that. There was one other thing I was going to mention, and it has slipped my mind, so I'll just ask if you have any other questions for me.
Sir, if you could please come up to the podium and also address the board. That way the board can address.
Yes.
I think he's referring to his question about who's going to pay for it in the future. I'm just involved in the zoning part of it, not in the legal documents for who's responsible for taking care of the infrastructure over time, so I cannot definitively answer that question. I will say that it's going to have to be designed to meet the same codes everybody else is going to have to make. It's going to have those same legal maintenance issues worked out. Typically, all of that happens after the property owner determines through the zoning process what they're allowed to do with the property.
I'd like to ask, just for clarification, and well, first off, I'm more in tune with Mr. Norris about, this kind of zoning and or so much residential, but however, if they truly limited it, if it was R2, who's the R2 police that once they get at R2 and they decide, oh, we're not going to develop it now, we don't have time for it, or we don't have the funding, and somebody shows up 5 years from now, well, now you take 10 acres times 10 units an acre, now you can have 100 units. Is there an R2 police that keeps that from occurring if it was truly, because one thought process in my background is, now instead of having single-family residential homes, which a builder would build 2,500 square foot minimum homes in there, okay, which would encompass probably 3,500 square foot of covered ground that's now impermeable. So what goes on from there is, like she said, there is a lot less ground available to take up this water, and then, of course, you're supposed to retain the water and all that, but I've been to places where the retention pond's full, and you dig in the ground 6 houses away from there, and the water table is higher there than it was 5 years ago because of the hydraulics of all this water sitting in a retention pond, and these people are downhill from there. They may not have it in their yard, but now they have a superior yard or a higher water table in their yard. And so I guess I know I've asked you, threw a lot of stuff out there, but what keeps somebody from showing up 2 years and we approved this and it was only going to be, 18 units or whatever, and well, once they get it R2, they sell it to Jimmy or Johnny or somebody else, and now all of a sudden there's 100 units going there. Somebody's got deeper pockets and can do what they want to do.
Yes, sir. So to address the questions, this is a rezoning. So based on precedents, we can't now place any type of conditions or anything like that as such upon this rezoning. So the worst case scenario is 10 dwelling units per acre for this piece of property as multifamily if it's approved by you and the Board of County Commissioners. We're not here tonight. We're not looking at the conceptual site plan. We're not taking any of that into consideration. Basically, everything that they do or they develop will have to meet the requirements of the Santa Rosa County Land Development Code as approved by the Board of County Commissioners.
Hold on, all right, we've already heard how, the traffic issues, the water issues, how single family is more fitting for the area. If you have anything else new to say besides that, we'll welcome to hear it, but we've already heard that.
Well, I'm going to say one thing about the traffic end that hadn't been brought up, and Mr. Patrick covered most of what I was going to say. But I don't know if you've looked at that.
Can you please give your name and address for the record?
Okay. My name's Fred Campbell, 4530 Hickory Shores, Gulf Breeze, Florida. If you look at that map, if those houses get up in there, where the entrance is on Beechwood, it almost intersects with Kelly. And they're talking about it's not going to affect anything. Well, it will affect anything because they've only got one way in and one way out. And that's it. So that needs to be, I would think, very considered. And like I said, most of what I was going to say has already been covered. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for allowing me this time to speak to each of you on this issue. Obviously, it's very emotional for a lot of us, and myself included. My name is Sean Laws. I live at 1684 Beechwood Drive. If you could, please pull up the vacant map again. That vacant part, actually I do see the line now, I couldn't see from back where I was sitting. That's actually two pieces of vacant. I own the northern one on the west side. Yep, I own the northern one, and my house is just north of that on that piece of property right there. Even if the retention pond does its job, holds the storm water as we say or think it will, you know, you still can't stop mosquitoes, snakes, and things of that nature. It's going to back right up to my property, as well as a lot of these folks right here. Ms. Cato, I'm not really sure where you came up with this idea that townhomes have less vehicles. I'm a school bus driver in the south end of the county. Every home I drive past has got at least 1 to 2 cars in the driveway and another one probably in the garage and everywhere else. So it's definitely going to increase traffic. Beechwood Drive, if this thing does go through, it definitely needs to be widened. Like I said, I drive a school bus. Sometimes I stop at the house, use the restroom throughout the day when I'm on my route. Barely enough room for my school bus and another car to pass each other on that road. When I first built my house in 2012, Beechwood, I had to call the county. The road was all broken up. They came and resurfaced the road. That was 9 years ago. The road's already starting to break up just from the traffic that goes through it on a daily basis now. Like I said, I appreciate you guys' time. Ms. Cato, Ms. Bolton, I get it. You guys are trying to make some money. But however, this area needs to stay R1. And I thank you, Mr. Norris, for pointing that out earlier. Thank you.
Sir, that gentleman's been trying to speak for the last.
Oh,
Well, I was,
4 minutes
this
per
is
person.
getting redundant.
Hello, my name is George Foss. I live at 1735 Beaver Pond Road. I will show you in a second, but 42-year resident, 21 years in my own home that is adjacent to this property. So I pretty much grew up in these woods, very intimately familiar with the topography and how it lays out, which I know is pretty well covered. Yes, sir.
Right is forward, left is back, this middle is the
All right, so I included some slides. I didn't know that all that was going to be shown. So we can see what y'all have already seen, and you can see the proposed site plan that they have. And I'm not going to try to shine this in that guy's eye, but this road that comes down here and does this cul-de-sac right here, all these little squiggly lines is the topography that they're talking about, and it is not flat with a subtle. I mean, it goes steep, deep into the woods. So even if they have this retention pond here and it's sound, what happens down here at the end of this cul-de-sac? It's going to flow over here and it's going to go straight down into that pond and those wetlands and those waterways. Also, I'm not super impressed that engineers don't make mistakes. And we've seen Skanska, we've seen some other engineers. I don't know that that's going to be perfect plan. Not only that, they stop perking after a period of time. So they'll fill up with enough sediment, leaves, and plenty of oak trees that we have there that it's not going to function. So this is another view. It's hard to see, but this is an actual aerial view, and you can't really see a whole lot of homes on this road, but we know they're there, but they're covered with trees. And you know, this is the outlet, the East Bay, and this is a whole marshy wetland that we were all talking about protecting. This is the actual pond that you can't see with just maps. Over here is the beehive clusters, and those are important to know about because they actually impacted this water when they were being constructed, and their retention ponds that are engineered have overflowed and have filled up that pond with not only silty, muddy water, but every time it rains, these torrentials, the overflow is in the pond, which is going to contribute with the other contribute, with the other contribute, and I'll show you some flooding conditions that I've already experienced. Here's another view of the pond, and these are the developments of beehives that had come in, and everything went into these waterways. That's my home. That's solar power. I'm not a big green guy, but I do love trees. And this comes down this way. Huge trees, huge pine trees. This is another section of it. Again, we've pretty much seen that. This is the waterways that empty into the bay. Try to get a crystal clear shot of water that's crystal clear, minnows, all kind of fish, habitat that's already in place. This is actually the bottom area that we're talking in this valley and basin. These are the trees that are there. Huge pine trees, huge areas of natural Florida that we're not going to see anywhere. These are what I call the three kings. These are trees, pine trees that I don't know are duplicated anywhere in our area. I put my hand up against one. Look how big that is. Huge. All right, so this is another look. This is at the valley on Hickory Shores Boulevard, looking up towards the wetland, illustrating the valley. And this is towards East Bay. This is where it outlets. This is actually adjacent to where my dad lives now. Where we originally grew up was Route 2, Box 151B, which is now Hickory Shores, which was 4641. So that's where I grew up, and then I built really close to my father. And this is all the area that could be impacted here. And this is, again, from his property looking up towards Hickory Shores. And this is the little slice of bay that opens up in there. Is that my time? So I got 30 seconds to talk about fire suppression? Okay, understood. Been a firefighter for over 25 years. I'm a safety health officer with the battalion chief of Pensacola. NFPA 1710 says deployment of fire suppression operations, low risk R1 needs 15 firefighters in 8 minutes. Midway has 12. So even at R1, they don't have enough personnel to adequately suppress an R1 residential fire. Not only that, if it goes to R2, they need 28 firefighters in 10 minutes. They're not even close to that. They're going to have to get fire departments from Gulf Breach, which is volunteer, Holly Navarre Beach, Pensacola Beach. To get 28 firefighters there is going to take way over 10 minutes. Not only that, access is a problem, one way in, one way out. People park on the side of the road, you get a big ass truck, can't fit down there. It's a problem. On top of that, water problem, water supply. All the hydrants on Hickory Shores are welded shut, the big main caps, so they can get 500 gallons per minute. You look at a townhouse, what does a townhome generate? Large fire and a high life hazard. So what are we not going to be able to do? Save lives. So property, lives, conflagration with the woods, huge problem for that area. Love that fire department, volunteered there for 5 years. You just don't have the water supply. Yeah, to pee, to poop, to wash your hands, wash your face, but not to put out a very large structure fire. And so other than that, Breland engineers advised me. I talked to the Breland engineer. They're not saving any trees. He said they're going to bulldoze them. And the rest of my PowerPoint had that on it, which I spent a lot of time on. Sure you don't want to see it? I can go through real fast.
We'll see you. We'll see you.
I've got a flooding picture. Can I show you?
Yeah, yeah. We'll give you another minute.
Okay, that's the flooding behind my house. I have a retaining pond, and it never touched the retaining pond. But just this year, it touched the retaining pond all the way. This is the shoreline. This is another local development down the way. You can see how they just completely bulldozed it. They put in a engineered retention pond here, and it flooded over this road. You can see every single house in these developments. There is no there is no trees. I do have a little passion. This is a huge, huge development, thousands of acres. Here's another retention pond, and if you look close enough, there's runoff. Their engineered pond is failing. And again, house after house after house. We have a unique opportunity to put some R1s in there. I'm thinking one person will buy that property and keep it intact if she finds the right buyer. That's what I'm hoping for. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to deny without objection.
I don't see any objection. The motion has been denied.
Ready? Oh, and just as a point of clarification, this
Paul
is a
Bennett.
recommendation.
I live at 4648 Hickory Shores
The
Boulevard.
motion's already been denied. The motion's been denied.
I'm sorry.
You're good. The motion's been denied.
Oh.
But Everyone,
Anyway, thank you.
We were clapping for you.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess.